Ugh, it's been such a long time. Okay, so how is everyone? Good? Literally, it's the hardest part, starting. Hi guys, welcome back. I know it's been a while. So today I'm going to be using new makeup. It's not new makeup, but it's new to me, so I figured it might be new to you too. Some of these products I've never used before. Others I've just barely used maybe once or twice, so I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about them. I'm going to cut to the chase and go straight into skin prep. Alright, so I have already moisturized my skin with this, it's called Blendable Aromatic Spray Serum. I've been testing it out a couple times, and at first, I gotta be honest with you guys, I didn't like it. I didn't feel it was hydrating me enough. However, since my favorite priming spray is no longer available, it was a Hard Candy Hydrating Primer Mist with coconut water. You can't find this anywhere anymore, and I wish I would have known because I would have stockpiled in it. I've been on the hunt to find a good moisturizing spray to prep my skin with before I do my makeup. I've tried a lot of different ones. I haven't documented all of it, but so far this one is actually doing a really good job. You have to shake it because it does come separated. So you then spray it over, give it a couple seconds to absorb, and so far I like what I've been experiencing. So still testing this out. Don't know if I fully give it 100% recommendation, but there are other setting sprays that I'm also testing out. So I'm sure that's going to be an upcoming video at some point. I've also already gone ahead and moisturized. So I did go back with a little bit more spray since I felt my skin has been a little bit dry lately. And typically what I like to do is I like to spray my skin for it to get really hydrated. Just saturate it the most I can, give it a couple seconds to absorb, and then I go in with my lotion or face cream. And usually I do my makeup in the daytime, ready to go out, which means that I normally need to use a sunblock. So typically I use the Neutrogena Hydro Boost, but sometimes I find that it is gel based, and sometimes I find that it has a weird reaction with some of the products I put under my makeup where it starts to pill. So I've only tried the Biore UV Aqua Rich once. I really liked how it made my skin look. It was super glowy, so I'm actually going to go in with it again today. I'm not going to grab too much. And this one is just the SPF 50. So I just grabbed a little bit here, and I'm going to start spreading that throughout. Something that I like or interested me about this sunblock is that it's actually marketed as a moisturizer first, and then it's also a sunblock. Whereas the one I normally use is marketed as a sunblock first that moisturizes. But from when I applied it the one time I went out with this, it left a very natural, healthy looking glow on my skin, and it felt actually hydrated. Whereas with the Neutrogena one, it's not bad, but like I said, I'm looking for something that's not going to pill with the makeup I put on top. So I don't know if you guys can tell already, I do look a bit glowy. Not that it looked really dry to begin with, but after applying the Biore one, I do feel like it looks like I've been drinking 8 glasses of water a day, which I don't. This is your reminder to drink that water as well. Alright, so you guys, if you have watched my videos before, you know that I typically like to set some eye primer after the step and move on to the eyes to give the skin a little bit more time to absorb the product I put on top. We're going to do things a little bit different today. So in the video, I'm actually going to focus more on the face makeup, and then I'm going to do a separate video for the eyeshadow. And instead of looking like a weird raccoon here in front of you guys with just my eyes done, I'm actually going to do the face first. Okay, I zoomed out a little bit. I thought it was a little bit too close up just for the face makeup, but we're going to go ahead and start. So this one's definitely not new to anyone, unless it might be new to you. So I'm going to be using the E.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. This has been around for, gosh, I'm going to guess here and say about 10 years. That might be wrong, but I'm sure we're coming up to the 10-year mark here pretty soon. I just like to swirl it with my finger to warm it up. It's very, it has kind of like a balmy texture. And what I like to do is I pretty much just apply it over, I wouldn't call it my problem areas, but the areas that have the most visible pores. I think at one point when this first came out, before this one, there was a lot of hype around the Tarte Poreless something or other that's pretty much the same color as this one. But this was kind of like a dupe, much more affordable. And it took a while, I feel, to come to Canada. And when it came here, I stockpiled on it. So I still have, I think, about 5 of these that I haven't opened yet. I was worried that they wouldn't bring them, and I don't know. I had something going on in my head about stockpiling, I guess. So I have quite a couple of these to go through. If I don't mention what primer I'm using, you can always assume it's this one. All right, so I just pretty much, I do a little bit on the forehead because I do have a little bit of wrinkles up here starting to form. So I'm hoping this kind of fills them in a bit. I do the pores on my cheeks here, and then I do a little bit on my chin because sometimes I feel I have visible pores there as well. All right, so now I'm going to go in with foundation. Lately I have been using the L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Foundation. Today I'm going to be using the shade W4. I am a little bit darker than normal right now, so I feel like this is the closest match, but I'm not going to be using this one alone. As I mentioned, I have been using this for a while. I really like it. It's super blendable. It feels very light on the skin, and it doesn't feel as thick as other foundations, which I think plays into the whole blendable aspect of it. The finish is very natural. I wouldn't say it's super matte, and it's not very glowy either. And just in case this shade is a little bit dark for what I am currently at right now, I'm actually going to go ahead and also use the True Match Lumi Glotion. This one is definitely not new to anyone except for me and maybe one or two of you out there. But this one I saw a lot of hype around for a long time, and I thought, okay, you know what? I have to actually try it out to see what the fuss is all about. I've used it once before. I will say it did make me look a lot more glowy. So this is going to be in the shade 902, which is like the light glow. The medium glow is a little bit darker, so I have just swatched it on the back of my hand, and I think it would make me look a little bit darker, which is not a good combination if you're already going in with a slightly darker foundation. And to get the best finished look application from your products, it's always ideal if you warm it up on your skin first instead of going straight ahead to your cheeks, but those are tips for another day. So I'm just going to apply some of this. I'm going to do 2 pumps, 1.5 actually. So just for reference, and I'm going to go in with the light glow. I'm going to do too much, I think. And then I'm just going to mix it up with my hands. All right, so I've blended both of them. So you can see the consistency with the Lumi lotion is, it doesn't really change it too much. It makes it a little bit less liquidy, but still super blendable. I'm just going to go ahead and apply this everywhere on my face. And then I'm going to blend it out with my brush. So at this point, once it has been a little bit warmed up on my skin, I actually do like to tap it in to the brush that I'm going to be using. And then I will start swiping it onto the areas that need coverage. And another little tip, if you have a lot of either peach fuzz or baby hairs, something I've found helps is to, when you're applying the foundation initially, make those brush strokes go in the direction of your hairs. I don't microplane or whatever it's called. I don't shave my face. I pluck my peach fuzz above my lips, but I don't remove the hairs on my face. But what I like to do is, as I mentioned, apply the foundation in the same direction that those hairs grow in. Sometimes I see people using liquid foundation and they'll swirl it everywhere. And if you do have dry skin like myself, sometimes that isn't the best method because it can agitate the skin, and if there is a little bit of dryness, it can start to kind of, I guess ruffle isn't the right word, but it can agitate like the dry patches underneath. So the less you have to agitate it, the better. And as you can see, I'm pretty much spreading it in the direction that the hairs would come out in. I'm just picking up any foundation that's left over on the back of my hand to go over any extra red parts. I can always mix up more if I wanted more coverage. That's another thing that I do find. This foundation is very buildable, and you always want to blend it down your neck as well. Okay, so looking in the mirror, I can see still that there is a little bit of redness in some of the parts where I'm experiencing extra dryness. If you have psoriasis, girl, my heart is with you. I'm on the same boat. So sometimes we need a little bit extra coverage on those areas. I'm just going to mix a little bit more on my hand. If you don't like to get your hands dirty when you're doing your makeup, you could easily replace the back of your hand for a little mixing palette. And your finger, of course, you don't have to use either. You can replace it with the back of any brush. So I'll literally just mix it until it's very well blended and it looks like one. I know it was a trend for a while to use a spatula as well to apply your foundation. I don't know how much I believe in that. I never tried it out, but in any case, I think that sometimes there are areas of the face that need more coverage than others. So in this case, again, you have the back of your brush dirty, but you can just kind of apply it to those areas that you feel need more coverage. All right, so same as before, I'm going to go ahead and pick that up with my brush, and I'm going to swipe it onto those areas that I felt needed a little bit more coverage. part of applying the foundation with a brush, once you have swiped it onto all the areas that you want it to cover, if you feel there is some sort of streakiness, it's very easy to get rid of it. One of the best ways to prevent that, one is to hydrate your skin well. Secondly is to use clean brush products on your face. So your foundation brush, the cleaner it is, the less streaking is going to appear. If you have done both things and you still feel that there's a little bit of streakiness, you can easily just go in and tap all the areas that you applied the foundation on. You can easily just tap on the bottom. I drag here because it's not that visible, but just tap it in, and that's gonna blend everything super well, and it's gonna make those streaks non-existent. All right, so the skin on the face is looking pretty good. Now I'm gonna bring out another product that is new to me. Again, not new. This is the e.l.f. Liquid Camo Blush. This is gonna be in the shade Peach Perfect. I'm going to apply this next. I know some people like to apply concealer first, but I'm going to explain why I do it at this point in the process. So the reason that I'm going to be applying my blush first instead of my concealer is so that when I go to put in the concealer, it's actually going to blend it out and make it look very smooth. Something I noticed that a lot of people who do makeup tutorials or, you know, have their TikTok pages and YouTube and Instagram is that they will apply their blush, whether it's liquid or powder, and I feel like there's a bit of a harsh line between where the blush goes and where the skin without the blush starts. I've experimented a couple different ways, and I think the brush you're using makes a difference, but also the order you place the products in. Again, I'm not going to just dot this on the face. Oh my gosh, this is so hard to open. Wow. It's like they don't want you to get the product. I'm not going to dot this on my cheeks. Again, I'm going to apply it to the back of my hand. Oh, it's so satisfying when you pull it out and it doesn't get the sides dirty. I'm going to apply this to the back of my hand. And then I'm going to coat my brush with this. So I'm just using this one here and I'm going to start coating my brush with it. The reason I'm doing this is because if I would have put those little dots on the cheek like you see everyone else do, it's going to be harder for you to blend out. It's not impossible, but depending on the product, if it dries down quickly, if it's too pigmented, it's just harder to blend it out. All right, so I'm going to put it where I normally do, which is kind of towards the higher part of my cheek. And I'm just tapping it. This is a very soft color, so I feel like it's going to be very... You would have to intentionally be overdoing it if you have around my skin tone for it to look harsh. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I like to bring this up as close as possible to my eyes. And then I take it up a tiny bit towards the side of the face, not quite the temple because this is the temple, but just kind of upwards towards my forehead. I always like to put some under my nose as well and under my chin. But as you can see, this color is very soft, so it's very easy to work with. The formula itself I really like as well. And I'm actually going to go for a second layer of this, just because I want to make it look a little bit heavier. I'm going to build that up. Again, no surprises here. Same application method. Alright, so I just went in with the second layer just to build it up a little bit more. And now that I've put the blush where I wanted it, I'm going to go in with my concealer. Alright, so for my concealer, I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. These have been around for a long time as well. I don't think they're new to anyone. And this I have used for a while as well. I really love them. They're hydrating. They don't really oxidize. On myself, they don't crease either. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mix two colors. So I'm going to use light beige as well as light sand. One of them is a little bit peachier and the other one is a little bit more yellow. I'm just going to put that in the inner lower corner as well as the outer. And then I'm going to do the same for the other shade. And then I'm going to take a flat brush. You're never really going to see me use sponges here except for when I bake under the eyes, which I think isn't probably what people normally use sponges for. But I'm just going to blend these two together. I could have done this on the back of my hand, but it's going to mix under my eyes anyways. And I'm just going to bring up a little mirror here to do this better. But pretty much I'm going to drag this out, connect it to the ones I had applied on the outer corner, and drag it up. This is a really great way to clean up your eyeshadow as well, if you did that first. In this case, I didn't, so it's okay. We're just going to have to work with it. And it'll let you really clean up so you have a very crisp, sharp definition on the outer edges. And then whatever's left over, I like to kind of drag in this downward motion parallel to my nose. Do a little bit under my, right on the chin here, under the lip area. And if I have redness, I apply whatever's left over on the brush to the forehead as well. I will also be using the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Eraser. This is in the shade Neutralizer. And this is just to brighten up a little bit more the concealer I applied. This one I just dotted on. I wonder when they're going to change up the packaging on this concealer, because a lot of people love it, but I don't know that anyone really actually loves the little sponge tip. It gets really dirty and messy quickly. All right, and so now I'm just gonna pull this inwards towards the center top of my nose. And I'm going to fan it out here. And the same on this side. And as you guys can already see, this concealer is already covering a lot of the blush. So as I mentioned, if you have a really pigmented blush color that you're using, maybe you're not the best at blending it, or it dries down too quickly, or again, the pigmentation is really heavy, applying it under your concealer is actually a really good way for you to not have to stress about blending it out, because applying all the other products on top is going to do the work for you. All right, so now that I've dragged it out, I'm going to take my foundation brush again, and I'm going to tap it to blend it out. And it's great if you still have some leftover product on the foundation brush, because it's going to make everything kind of blend into each other seamlessly. And the same with the under eyes. So I'm just going to tap this in roughly the same shape that I had dragged out the concealer application itself. All right, now I'm going to go in with my setting powder. I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Perfect Finish HD powder. This is just a translucent shade. I'm going to use an angled brush that you would probably normally use for blush application. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to prep to bake. So what I like to do is, first off, I like to smooth out any creases that have happened under the eye. And then I like to squint a tiny bit just to stretch out that skin. You don't have to squint, obviously. But I'm going to apply a very thin layer of translucent powder before I actually go in and bake. The reason I do this is because if I go in straight with a baking product, sometimes it clings to dry patches, and then your under eye ends up looking really cakey. So by applying a very thin layer of translucent powder, you're kind of setting an even foundation or a base for the powder that's going to go on top, and then it won't stick heavily to certain areas more than others. This translucent powder is actually really good also to make pores disappear in general. So I like to tap it into the same areas that I put that first primer in. And again, any areas that I might be baking in, I like to set this powder there as well. All right, now I'm going to start to bake. So I'm going to take the sponge that I mentioned I'm going to use. It's dry. I don't wet it. I'm not sure what happens if you wet it and then go into the powder. I'm assuming it's going to make some cakey mixture, but I always use my sponges dry. And I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild Loose Setting Powder, again in translucent. You could find this one really cheap, I'm sure in Walmart. I got mine from Amazon. It does have a very generous amount of powder. And so far I've been liking it. I have been trying it out for the last couple months. It gets the job done. I have no complaints about it, to be honest. I think especially nowadays with how expensive makeup is, if you're looking for something that's gonna do the job and good to use day to day for work or school or whatever it is that you're doing, this one's really good and it's super affordable and it has a lot of products. So if you guys see it, if you get the chance, test it out, and if you like it, let me know, and if you don't, let me know too. So I'm literally just applying I should have probably explained this. There's already some loose powder out. I'm taking the sponge and literally dipping it into the powder, so it's coating the sponge this way. And what I like to normally do is I'll pat the sponge on like the lid just to make sure it's more evenly spread out. I feel like this is the same method that people use with a velour puff. And then I like to apply it to the same area that we had set the translucent pressed powder on. And of course, since I am baking, I'm going to go in with a heavy hand because we're going to brush this off later on. And sometimes I like to bake not only to set the makeup, but also to brighten the areas as well. So one of the areas that I like to brighten here is just the bridge of my nose. So I'm going to go straight down. And the top of the Cupid's bow, as well as where I had applied that concealer initially. I'm going to let the powder do its thing and bake for a while. In the meantime, I'm going to take a very dense brush. You could use a fluffy brush if you wanted to instead. I'm going to go in with the e.l.f. Halo Glow Powder Filter in light neutral. I've been testing this one out as well, And so far I like it. I don't know that it makes like a huge difference, but the finish is very nice. So I've been using this instead of my typical Sephora micro smoothing powder. Again, price is a big factor nowadays. I'd say the finish is very similar. They're both very like microfine, and they both do a very good job on the skin. So I haven't really been noticing a difference between this one and the Sephora one that I normally use. Again, I'm going to apply the powder and I'm just going to go downwards brush strokes. This one is technically a foundation, I think, as well, like a pressed, well, I guess it is just a pressed powder. I'll press it in and swipe it down as well. So just try to make sure you get the right shade. Otherwise, it could change the way your makeup looks. I do feel that it leaves a very super subtle glow. So unlike other powders that might completely mattify and suck the life out of you, this one does leave that glow. All right, so just to give the baking powder a little bit more time to bake, I'm going to go in with my brows now. This is going to be very interesting considering I normally do my brows after my eyes are done, but we're not going to do it that way today. I'm sure I'm probably one of the few people, along with your grandmother, who's still using the ABH Dip Brow Pomade, but it's just so good. So, you know, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Mine looks a little bit wonky, but anyways, I'm using the shade Dark Brown, and I'm just using an angled brush, and I'm going to do my best to get some product on here and fill in my brows. So I like to brush my brow hairs upwards with the spoolie first, just to get a better idea of what areas are sparse that I need to fill in a bit. So if you've used this pomade, you know that it's good, it's potent when it's new. When it's old, it starts to dry out, of course, and then it's not as good. I tried this hack recently where a lady put it to boil, like covered it, closed it, put it to boil in a pot with water, and she did it for 20 minutes. I was scared that the glass would break and explode, so I didn't do it for that long. I did it for like, I think 15 minutes. Between 10 and 15, and then I took it out. So yeah, I don't know if it really worked. It's not as buttery as it was when I first got it. That's to be expected though, it's not new. All right, so as I mentioned, I brushed my brow hairs up, and then I'm going to do very light strokes in the areas that I feel need to be filled in. Because this pomade is a little bit drier, sometimes I go back and forth in the areas because it's not going to leave like a very defined line as if it was new. But I actually might change brushes here. I'm going to use a thinner brush for better definition. Okay, so getting a finer brush definitely is going to make a big difference here. Hopefully I'm not covering the camera for you guys. I know a lot of people do their eyebrows off camera. I think it's because there's not much to say. It just makes for an awkward silence, especially if you really have to concentrate to get the shape right. Okay, so that hack actually pretty much did work. The first brush I used was not ideal for this. This second one is really good though. And we're just going to be rocking bushy brows today. I'm just going to set some very neutral looking brown powder on the brows themselves. This is going to help get rid of any shine that might have been left over from the pomade, as well as I like to fill in the front of the brow with the powder instead of the pomade. Otherwise you get a really harsh 2016 brow, which if you were around for that, you remember those weren't the cutest, but they existed, they were a choice. I don't know. It just, they didn't look as natural because of how extra sculpted they looked. All right, I'm going to apply gel to my brows now, and I'm definitely going to have to do my eyeshadow because I feel like right now the eyebrows are the star of the show. They are definitely hard to be missed right now if you look at my face. All right, so brows are done. I'm going to go ahead and brush off the powder that we had baked with. And I do kind of like a backward 7 motion. So I swipe it and pull it down parallel to my nose and my laugh lines. Yeah, no big tricks, no fancy science here, just swiping away the powder. That powder that I baked with, it's actually really matte too, so if you don't like a very luminous look to the face, instead of using the Halo Glow, you could use that same powder with like a more loose, big setting powder brush and just loosely apply that all over the face. I've done that before as well and it works very well. Alright, so since we applied the blush underneath the concealer, there's a little bit of color poking through. Again, the color itself was super light, what I chose to go in with today. I think in the future I might even be able to use this above the blush itself. Not the blush, the concealer itself. But something that I did want to test out as well is the e.l.f. Primer Infused Matte Blush. I could only get my hands on the shade Always Rosy. The other ones seem to forever be sold out everywhere I go to look for them online. in stores. So this is the one we're going to do today. I'd say it's still in the same color family as the peach one that we used, but it's a little bit deeper. So I'm actually going to do a little experiment here. There's a new brush that I've been meaning to test out from Morphy as well. This is the M201 Powder Blush brush. So this actually reminds me a lot of, if you're familiar with indie brands, there is a brand called Singe Beauty, and their blush brush is also, it feels the same, honestly. Like the quality is very soft. The Singe one is a lot smaller, I'd say, so you could be more precise with it, whereas the e.l.f. one is definitely covers a larger area. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you do get a very diffused look when you use this blush brush, as opposed to using a typical blush brush, which is always angled and much more densely packed. So another trick, not trick, but I guess tip, to get very diffused and natural looking blush is what brush that you're using. Typically for this, what I like to use is this brush from Flower Beauty. Rest in peace, very good brand. If you live in Canada, you can still get this brush on Amazon. So I have purchased quite a few. But pretty much it has kind of like a feathered out dome shape, and it's not super dense. So it lets you diffuse the blush out very well. Another note to self video idea is to show you the difference between like a very dense blush brush and a fluffier, softer, less dense brush. All right, so I'm gonna do the brush I normally use on the right side, my right side, your left side. So I'm just gonna go in, and then on the other side, I'm gonna use the e.l.f. brush. I'm just gonna tap some onto my brush, and I'm gonna start patting it pretty much in the same area we had applied that liquid blush. Again, with this brush, so far, every time I've used it with different blush shades, it's very hard to get a very harsh looking blush placement because of the way the bristles are. They're naturally like very spread apart towards the tip, and it does the same for your blush itself. And I'm going to apply it up literally the same area as we put the blush initially, so up towards the temple. So this is with this brush. I'm going to switch on the other side, and I'm going to use that Morphy brush I mentioned. Moment of truth. I feel like I've always been looking for a good blush brush that doesn't just leave like a heavy streak, because sometimes once you place it that way, it's harder to blend out later. All right. Definitely these bristles feel a little bit not as soft as the Flower Beauty ones, but I'm still getting a very diffused application, so I think this is a pass, like a pass as in a seal of approval. This is a success in my book. I do feel like this brush is taking a little bit more back and forth to pick up product, whereas the flower one picked it up a little bit quicker. So just a quick note there. I'm going to apply this under my nose and under my chin as well. All right, so this is the blush so far. This is a very nice shade. It's pretty neutral, and it does look very natural. It's not too warm. It's definitely not cool. Very good everyday shade, I think. I just wish I could get my hands on more of these e.l.f. shades. Something else I have been doing lately when it comes to blush application is if I do feel like there's a bit of a harshness that I can't get rid of by trying to blend out, I'll actually tap into a much lighter blush shade. So this is the Nars Sex Appeal shade. Again, this looks kind of skin tone. I don't know if you guys can appreciate the color there. But what I do is I take a very, and in this case I'm taking that Singe blush brush, which is quite small, but the bristles are super soft. They're not super densely packed. So I'm going to take this one here, and I apply it along the edges of wherever I feel I want the blush to, this is such a tongue twister, wherever I want the blush to blend in better with the face itself and the skin. Typically that's along that edge where I try to blend out and the very front of my cheek. So I'm going to do that on one side to see if you guys can notice. Sometimes depending on how light the shade is, I go under the eye as well. Okay, so this is the side with that really light blush shade, and this is the side without. I don't know if you guys can appreciate it. I think in person, if you're super nitpicky, this is a method that you might appreciate to help you blend out your blush better. But that's pretty much the side without, and this is the side with. I've found too, depending on the shades you use, this works really well if you're using something like red blush, or even with like pink blush itself, the hot pink, the baby pink. All right, so now I'm going to go in with bronzer, and I swear this video could have been sponsored by e.l.f. I'm going to go in with the Forever Sunkissed Primer Infused Matte Bronzer in the shade. What is this? Oh, the shade is Forever Sunkissed, and it's the Primer Infused Matte Bronzer. So for this, I actually do like to take an angled blush brush, the typical dense ones, and I'm just going to go on the top corners as well as the upper part of the hollow of the cheek. This bronzer, I must say, for years I was loyal to, let me pull it up. I was loyal to the Wet n Wild Mega Glow contour palette, specifically the shade Dulce de Leche. But sometimes I felt that when I applied the bronzer in there, or the contour I guess, it looked a little bit orange and it didn't quite blend out easily. With this e.l.f. Primer Infused bronzer, it blends itself out. Like, it's very, very easy to apply. So I would recommend this for people who are kind of starting to play around with bronzers. If you feel like your face looks a little bit flat and you want to bring in some dimension without having to go in heavy with a cream contour and like the sculpting and all these things, this bronzer I think is phenomenal. I'm going to go under the nose and under the chin again. You can build it up. It is pretty safe to build up and it won't get super, super pigmented in the wrong ways. It just adds a little bit of color back into your face. All right, so for the cheeks, not the cheeks, for highlighter, I'm going to use this Rare Beauty, I guess it's the powder blush, but it's like a radiant blush that they have, which is like a crossover between a highlighter and a blush itself. This is the shade Cheer. I'm going to use this as my highlighter today, and the reason I'm picking this one is because I want it to give a luminous finish to the cheek. So I've just taken some on my highlighter brush, and I'm going to apply this to the highest point of my cheek, but I'm not going to go past where my eyes are. Something I noticed that some people like to do is they will apply highlighter all the way to the center, the apple of the cheek. I don't know, you love it or you hate it, I guess. But personally, I feel like it emphasizes pores to go that far up in the front. And to mimic a more natural glow, it's better if you just kind of stay in this C shape without going past the eyes. So I'm just going to apply it here. I'm going to go above the brow bone. And I think this color actually complements the blushes that we used really well. All right, so this is the glow that it gives. I do like the glow that it gives. It provides a little bit of color too. In this case, I do feel that it paired very well with the blushes. Since it does have a little bit of pink pigment, I'm going to apply a different highlighter to my bridge, the inner corners, and maybe the Cupid's bow. All right, so spoiler alert, I'm going to do my eyes and then I'm going to go in with a highlighter. But I'm going to be using the Rare Beauty highlighter in the shade Exhilarate. So this is like a champagne gold, very light. But I won't apply that right now. I'll apply it to my eyes, bridge of the eye, inner corner. I guess I could do the bridge of the nose right now. So I'm just taking a little fan brush, tapping a very little amount. And I'm just going to focus it on the part here between the eyes, just straight up and down. And I'm going to take a little bit and apply it here to the tip of the nose as well as the Cupid's bow. Now for the eyes, I'm going to go ahead and do those off camera. But for the lips, which typically I do after the eyes, but in this case I'm going to do it before, I'm going to use the shade 802 Daylight Delight in the Revlon Super Luster Lipsticks. This is brand new. I'm going to have to open it. I love a new bullet. It always looks so pretty. So this looks pretty close to my color. I'm just going to apply a little bit before I choose what liner to pair with it. I'm going to actually pair this with the shade Whirl from MAC for the lip pencil. And I'm not going to make you sit through me lining my lips. Alright, so this is the shade, as I mentioned, 802 Daylight. I paired it with MAC liner in Whirl. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do my eyes off camera. Well, not off camera for another video, and then I'll come back and show you the finished look. Okay, so this is the finished look with the eyes done. Quick note here, I did use Day Day's signature Sweetheart Secrets palette, so still in the process of going through that one to make a review. I will have in the description down below which lashes I used, as well as I used the Hard Candy Look on Lock setting spray. The mist in this is incredible. I really like it. Super, super, super fine. I'm gonna have to see how well it wears. But overall, it says it has a natural finish. So not too matte, not too dewy. I think it stayed true to what we had before. But yeah, this is pretty much the finished look. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I was able to touch on some products that maybe you haven't tried yet. Maybe you have these and you love them or you hate them. Let me know down below, or if you have any recommendations as well. As I mentioned, I did use that Exhilarate highlighter on the inner corner, brow bone, bridge of the nose, as well as the tip. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. It means a lot for you to take the time and actually watch these videos. If you haven't already, consider subscribing if you want to get notified on when I might have another video coming up. I promise it won't be months on end like last time. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!